We're going to go over the project for solutions for the rock, paper, scissors game. And the goal here was to learn how to use switch statements. So if we review the project description, we're creating a class called rock, paper, scissors. I will copy that so that we can create a class called that. We'll add a comment, we'll prompt the user for their name, and then we'll ask them to select 1 through 3 representing rock, paper, scissors. The computer will make a random choice based off the same numbering scheme, and then we'll use a switch statement to actually do the logic of the game. So to start off, let's create our Eclipse project. So we'll go to new Java project, and we'll call this project for solution. And then inside that Eclipse project, we will create a new class called rock, paper, scissors. And we'll have it automatically create a main method for us. And there's our empty class. Now we'll go back here, we'll add a comment, but then I'm going to take items 3 through 7, and I'm going to copy those and turn those into comments in my code. So for my top comment, I'll just say project for solution, CSC110, spring 2023. And of course, for your solution, you would put your name and a little more detail than that. So now I'm just going to add comment or turn all of the stuff from the project description into comments. So the first thing I want to do is prompt the user for their name and then greet them. So to do that, I'll need a scanner. And I need to import scanner. Then I'll need a string for the user's name. And I'll use next in my scanner to get that. And then to greet the user, I'll say welcome to whatever their username is. And actually, I forgot to prompt them. And so I'll print a statement, what is your name? And I'll just do a print there so that when they enter their name, it'll be on that line. So we have enough code, I think, that it's time to test. What is your name? Wade, and it welcomes. Okay, so this is good. This first part, we can call that done. Then we need to create a menu for them to select the number 1 through 3, and then we have this rock, paper, and scissors. So what I'm going to do is turn this into some strings, and then I'll add system out print line, and that way I have exactly what the description is asking for here. So then we need to tell them to select one of those. And so now they're getting this little menu. Now this menu will be displayed. I'm not sure why I'm getting I put a colon instead of a semicolon there. So once they've done this, I need to know what their choice is. So I'm going to use the scanner again, but this time I'm going to get what their choice is. So that would be next int. And then I want to test that this works. So I'm going to put a temporary print statement there, and then I'll run my code. I'll enter my name and my choice, and you see the selection was 3. And that's what I expect. Here, I'm just testing that I'm reading the integer correctly. Since I know that works, I can go ahead and remove it. The next step is to get the computer's choice. For that, I need to pick a random number between 1 and 3. So I'm going to use a random object to do that. Next int 3 will give me a number 0, 1, or 2. So if I add 1, that'll give me 1, 2, or 3. So I have the computer's choice and I have my choice. So now I need a switch statement to play the game of rock, paper, scissors. So the switch statement is going to have the general form where we have a switch, and I'm going to switch on the user choice. And this is my empty switch statement. So my first case is if I have a 1, and I'm going to go ahead and put in the case and then a break for each of these. And then I'll add a default case that just prints out you lose. So this would happen if the user picks an invalid number. So now in each of these cases, we want to think about what's going on. So this case 1, that represents when the user has selected option 1, which is the user picks rock. So I can safely say here, and I'm going to put a comma there. That'll make sense in a moment. I'm going to make this a print. But for each of these, I'm going to print what the user chose. The rock, paper, or scissors, depending on if they chose 1, 2, or 3. Again, I've written a lot of code, so I need to run this and test it. Okay, so 3 is scissors. 2 is paper. 1 is rock. And if I have an invalid selection, I lose. At this point, I now have a switch that has a case for each choice the user could make. And if they choose something invalid, I report that. I want to think about what I'm going to do if the user picks 1, if they choose rock. Well, what I need to do is, based off the computer's choice, I need to determine who won the game. So I'm going to display what the computer chose and then the result. So the results are all comments here. So I'm just going to put those at the end of my case here, and I'll actually grab those as I need them. Again, I have a conditional situation where I'm going to make a decision based on the computer's choice. I know what the user chose now. They chose rock. So now the condition is, what happens if the user chose rock, paper, or scissors? What do we do? I could use the switch here, and it would have the same structure as the one I have outside. However, I'm going to use an if statement here since there's only 3 cases. So I think that that's reasonable enough. I'm going to say if computer choice equals 1, then there's a tie. So I'll print that the computer chose rock, and then I'll say that there's a tie. Now, if the computer chose 2, I'm going to copy these lines of code. So now if the computer chose 2, then it chose paper, and paper covers rock, you lose. And then finally, if the computer chose 3, and notice I just copied that case before, and I'll just edit it as I need. Then the computer chose scissors, and so rock crushes scissors, you win. Now, there's different ways I could do this to be a little more consistent with my print statements. I could do multiple lines and so forth, but I think this is sufficient. Now, a couple of things here. If the computer chooses a value other than 1, 2, or 3, then what will happen? Nothing. And so it's really up to you to decide what you want to do there. We could put an error message that says something like computer error, you win. And that way we cover the case if something weird happens and that random number generator doesn't give us a valid choice. We're not just leaving the user hanging for them to sit there to think it's taking a long time to calculate the results of the game. I think this is sufficient for our case. So now we're going to do the same thing in the case of choice 2, where the user picks paper, and in choice 3, where they choose scissors. I copied and pasted the choices because the computer chose paper and so forth. Those are consistent. The results, though, are different. So the tie case is actually different in each one. So what I need to do is go in and change these error messages. So here, if the computer chooses rock and the user chooses paper, then we would say paper covers rock, you win. Now, if the computer chose paper, then we have a tie. And if the computer chooses scissors, you've chosen paper. So we would say scissors or cut paper, you lose. Okay, so here again, the user has chosen, it's number 2, so the user has chosen paper. So paper covers rock if computer chooses rock. If the computer chooses paper, we have a tie. And if the computer chooses scissors, scissors cut paper, and so the user loses. Again, you want to always walk through the logic that your program executes with, because that's what's going to actually execute. It doesn't matter what you intend to say. You want to walk through the logic to make sure everything you've said is correct. Okay, so now our final option is if we choose scissors. And so there, if the computer chooses rock, then rock crushes scissors, and you lose. If the computer chooses paper, I'll actually just copy this one, scissors cut paper. So here, in this case, you win. Above, when I copied this from the previous condition, or the case of 2, when the user selects paper, they lost. But here, the user has selected scissors, the computer has selected paper, and so the user wins in this case. In our final case, it's a tie. So let's double check our logic. User has scissors. If the computer chooses rock, the rock crushes scissors, the user loses. If the computer chooses paper, the user has scissors, scissors cut paper, user wins. And then if they both choose scissors, it's a tie. So I think we have now everything we need. And of course, let's run this and test. I chose paper, computer chose rock, I win. And then you want to run this several times just to ensure to see what happens. So it looks like I'm on a roll here. I should keep going at least until I lose. And there I gave, my name is 3 instead of the number 3. So it looks like here, I still win. I wonder if I can lose. No, there's a tie, paper, paper. And I would recommend that you play this several times just to be sure that every possibility that comes up seems to work. Other than the fact that I don't seem to be able to lose. I either tie or lose. So 2 and 2, okay. And the computer's, I think, choosing a different thing every time. So, I finally lost. So I chose scissors, computer chose rock, rock crushes scissors, so I lose. So at this point, I would go in and fill in the document and submit it because I think what we have here is sufficient. Now, there's certainly a lot that we could do to improve this program. We're not doing a lot of checking for valid names, valid selections. If something's invalid, we just say, whoever did the invalid thing, you lose. So there's things we could do to prompt the user for a resubmission of something. And that would allow them to, if they made a mistake, instead of just automatically losing, they would have the option to re-enter something. And covering loops is where we would get into something like that. So once you learn loops, then you could add something like that to this code. There's also a lot of ways to simplify this. Once you learn about methods, those let you simplify some of the thought here, especially with some of the output. But for this project, what we have here is more than sufficient. Again, the focus is the switch condition. And then once you're inside one of the cases of your switch condition, thinking about how do I do the conditional there? Again, there's no reason you couldn't do a switch here with 1, 2, 3 in default. That would be perfectly acceptable. Either way is fine. The one key though with this project is since it was about switches, you did have to have a switch somewhere.